In most stories, kings are remembered for their victories. They conquer lands, win glorious battles, and build great empires. But in ancient China, there was a king who became famous for something very different. He became famous for losing, and then for waiting. His name was Goujian, and his story is about the most dangerous kind of enemy, the one who knows how to be patient. A war between two ambitious kings. In the south of ancient China, two rising powers were locked in a bitter rivalry, Wu versus Yue. Two kingdoms, two ambitious rulers, and not enough room for both. Wu was ruled by King Fuchai, powerful, confident, expanding. Yu was ruled by Goujian, younger, impatient, hungry for glory. Goujian struck first. He attacked Wu, hoping to eliminate his rival before Wu became unstoppable. It was a fatal mistake. Fuchai's army crushed Yui's forces. Goujian's capital was surrounded. His kingdom was hours away from extinction. He had two choices: die as a proud king or live as a humiliated one. He chose humiliation. A king becomes a servant. To save his kingdom, Goujian surrendered. He personally went to the court of Wu, but he did not go as a guest. He went as a servant. For years, he lived like this, taking care of the royal horses, cleaning the stables, obeying orders from his enemy, not as a king, not even as a noble, but as a slave in the court of the man who defeated him. According to some accounts, he even had to taste Fuchai's excrement to diagnose the king's health. Whether this detail is historically accurate or not, the humiliation was real, and it was public. Everyone in Wu's court could see the king of Yu cleaning stables. Everyone could see a ruler reduced to a servant. This was designed to break him. The weapon inside humiliation. Psychologically, this was a critical moment. Most people, when humiliated, do one of two things. They collapse into shame, or they explode in rage. Goujian did neither. He weaponized his humiliation. He turned his shame into a fuel source that would burn for 10 years. In modern psychology, this might be called productive obsession. The ability to turn negative emotion into long-term strategic action. Many in Wu believed he was broken, but one man was not convinced. A minister named Wu Zixu warned King Fuchai, "Goujian is not defeated, he is only waiting." But Fuchai, drunk on victory, did not listen. Eventually, Goujian was allowed to return home. And this is where the real story begins. The most dangerous thing: a patient enemy. When Goujian returned to Yu, he did something unexpected. He did not immediately rebuild his army. He did not call for revenge. Instead, he began to rebuild himself. Every night, he gave up his royal bed and slept on rough firewood instead. Above him, he hung a bitter animal gallbladder. Every morning, before anything else, he would reach up, take a piece of the gallbladder, and put it in his mouth. Imagine that. Every single morning for 10 years. The first taste of the day, pure bitterness. Not coffee, not breakfast, bitterness. That was his alarm clock, that was his meditation, that was his reminder system. Not a motivational poster, not a vision board, but actual daily physical discomfort. This was the origin of the famous Chinese phrase, sleeping on firewood and tasting gall. But for Goujian, it was not a symbol. It was a system. He understood something many rulers never learn. Revenge is not about anger. It is about timing. For 10 years, he waited. He lowered taxes to win his people's loyalty. He encouraged farming to rebuild the economy. He trained soldiers in secret. He rewarded loyal ministers. And most importantly, he pretended to remain weak. To the outside world, Yu looked harmless. Inside, it was slowly turning into a weapon. The fall of Wu. 10 years is a long time. Long enough for a weak kingdom to become strong, long enough for a disciplined king to build an army, and long enough for a victorious king to become careless. While Goujian was preparing in silence, King Fuchai of Wu was changing in a very different direction. Victory had made him arrogant. Success had made him blind. He built grand palaces, he launched distant wars, he ignored warnings from his advisors, and worst of all, he silenced the one man who truly understood Goujian. Wu Zixu, the minister who had warned, Goujian is not defeated, he is only waiting. Fuchai forced him to commit suicide. The only person who saw the danger was now gone. Wu had become exactly what Goujian needed it to become: powerful, proud, and vulnerable. The moment Goujian had been waiting for finally arrived. Wu's army was exhausted from distant campaigns, its treasury was drained, its court was divided, so after 10 years of patience, Goujian struck. This time, the war ended very differently. The army of Yu marched into the capital of Wu. King Fuchai, once the conqueror of Yu, now stood defeated in his own palace. According to tradition, Fuchai asked for mercy. He asked to live in exile, just as he had once allowed Goujian to return home. Goujian refused. The king, who had once been a slave, now decided the fate of his former master. Fuchai took his own life. The real victory. The real story is not about revenge. It is about how he turned defeat into a weapon. More precisely, he proved a kind of strength that most people don't understand. Sometimes, the most dangerous strength is invisible. It is not sharp swords. It is not massive armies. It is not strong fortresses, but rather patience when others demand action. Discipline when others seek comfort. Silence when others need to be loud. He turned time into a weapon. He turned humiliation into fuel. He turned defeat into strategy. And in the end, it was not his army alone that destroyed Wu. It was 10 years of waiting. The modern question. Today, we live in a culture obsessed with quick wins. Social media rewards instant reactions. Don't wait, respond now. Business celebrates overnight success. This startup went from zero to unicorn in 6 months. Politics demands immediate results. What have you done for me today? Everything is fast. Everything is now. Everything is visible. But Goujian's story asks a different question. What if the most powerful move is the one nobody sees you making? What if real strength is not about how loud you are, but how long you can stay silent? Think about Jeff Bezos telling Amazon investors in 1997, "We're going to lose money for years, get comfortable." Think about Kobe Bryant training at 4 a.m. when everyone else was still asleep. Think about the cancer researcher who works for decades before a breakthrough. Think about the entrepreneur who builds for 5 years before anyone notices. In a world that celebrates speed, patience has become a superpower. Not because waiting is easy, but because almost nobody can do it anymore. The dark side of victory. But there is a darker ending to this story. After Goujian destroyed Wu, his most loyal advisor, Fan Li, quietly left the kingdom. Before leaving, he wrote the king a letter. "You are a great king to share suffering with, but you are a dangerous king to share success with." Fan Li understood something crucial. A man who can endure 10 years of humiliation is not necessarily a man who knows how to live 10 years in peace. Goujian had turned himself into a weapon, and weapons do not retire. They either break or they keep cutting. So his story leaves us with one final question. If you spend 10 years turning yourself into a weapon, what happens when there is no enemy left? Can you put the weapon down? Or does the sharpness become who you are? Goujian won his war. But did he ever stop fighting? That is the question his story does not answer. And maybe that is the most important question of all.